The candidates were previously provided topics of great concerns to the local government, such as the local tax structures, inventory tax, infrastructure funding, internet e-fairness, tax collection, advisory commission on intergovernment relations. The order which we address has been decided randomly. These guys picked a little from 1 to 4, and the first one that picked number 1 was Scott Angel. But let me give you a little history about Mr. Angel. Scott Angel is a native of Breaux Bridge, one of 9 children from the middle-class family, is a homegrown product from Louisiana. He was appointed by Governor Kathleen Blanco in 2004 as Secretary of the Department of Natural Resources and the chairman of the state mineral boards, reappointed to those positions by Governor Bobby Jindal in 2008, making him the first DNR secretary to serve governors of different parties. In 2010, he was appointed as the 52nd Lieutenant Governor, followed by unanimous confirmation by both chambers of the Louisiana legislators. During his tenure, interim Lieutenant Governor, he successfully negotiated $45 million down payment by the British Petroleum to the state of Louisiana for tourism, marketing in the wake of the Deepwater Horizon event. In addition, he was the state point person to negotiate in the end of the Gulf of Mexico drilling moratorium and provided the leadership to help streamline the federal oil and gas permitting. After a successful campaign in the fall of 2012, Scott assumed the commissionership of the Public Service Commissioner of District 2 on January the 1st, 2013. Let's give a good warm welcome to Scott Angel.
Thank you, David. It's an absolute pleasure to be here in Lafayette, and let me do my part to welcome you here to Lafayette and to this unique place we call Acadiana, where we have a certain joy of life and a joie de vivre. And while you're doing the hard work associated with your convention, I would encourage you to make sure to participate in some of the traditions and opportunities that are available here in this area. And certainly I want to join with others and for a moment say how thankful we are for the prayers that flowed into Lafayette and Acadiana since last Thursday. It's been remarkable. You could feel the spirit flowing as folks all across Louisiana, in fact, all across America, were praying for the families and for the victims and for recovery. And certainly, I would encourage you to keep those families and those victims in your prayers as we move forward and try to establish some sense of normalcy. I, too, want to join with others and compliment and thank Mayor David Cormerdale for a tremendous job in leading the state. I could think of no person better to lead LMA over the last year through some tough times in Louisiana. And I think that what I love more about David than anything is his spirit of wanting to work with people, making sure that there's always room for another opportunity and another opinion in his style and his management style. So I appreciate that. But it's not only David, it's actually you get the whole Cormerdale family when you get David. You go to Grand Isle, you get them all. They're all very, very focused on public service. So David, I appreciate that. I know your mom and dad did a tremendous job raising you and putting that public service in your heart. So on behalf of Louisiana and our family, I certainly want to thank you. I'm excited about being here. I'm excited about the future of Louisiana, and I'm excited about the prospects of being your next governor. You know, I will always believe that our greatest days are still ahead. I always believe that the sun is rising in Louisiana. And while saying that, certainly we have some challenges that are right in front of us. And I think we meet those challenges head on this fall by electing a governor who has a proven track record of working across party lines and across racial lines and gender lines and geographic lines. I always have said, we don't need a governor that knows everything. We need a governor that wants to work with everyone. I really believe that. And I would tell you that not this governor, not the previous governor, the 5 previous governors before, or the next 5 governors ever have a monopoly on all the good ideas. All the good ideas don't come from the White House and the State House. They often come from the farmhouse and the schoolhouse and certainly your house. So I appreciate the work that you do. And I've sat in the chairs that you sit. Having spent 16 years in elected local office, I understand how difficult it is to be on the front line. I understand how difficult it is to always get those constituent calls. I understand that you go to church with your constituents, you go to the ball field with your constituents, you go to the grocery store, and you don't have the staff, many of you don't have the staff to say, well, just get with someone else on my staff. You got to take it yourself. You don't have the right to go to the city council chamber room and point the finger at somebody across, because you all represent the same people, and people are interested in solutions. I absolutely believe that we need a governor who is interested in solutions, and I want to salute you. I want to say thank you for the work that you do. And we all know what happens occasionally when we go to the market. We're coming back from a city meeting, and we're just going into the market. All we want to do is get a loaf of bread and maybe some luncheon loaf, because it's our turn to cook supper, and we get in and we get pinned down somewhere between aisle 12 and 14 by one of our constituents that approach us and say, hey, how you doing? At which you respond, I'm doing fine. And then you hear, do you remember me? And our initial reaction is, sure, I remember you. And then you get that dreaded question, well, what's my name, right? And many of us got to get through it, and you get through it by asking a series of questions, and you soon make a connection, because that's what happens in local government. And we in state government could take a page out of your book and focus on people and solutions, and certainly my track record of doing that is very, very clear. I would tell you that I want to acknowledge what you do, and I also want to thank the spouses and the significant others, because you didn't sign up for all those phone calls, and you didn't sign up for all that complaining, but you put through it. So would y'all please join with me in thanking the significant others and spouses that are here. Clearly, it's time for us to get our fiscal house in order in Louisiana. We've been through mid-year budget cuts now, it seems, for some 25 years in this state. And it's important that we focus on doing the right thing and making some changes, because we've got a structural problem in our budget system. How can it be that the two most important measures of an economy are, number one, the number of people working, and number two, the gross domestic product, the productivity of those people working? Last year, we pegged a needle on both of those metrics. Not everywhere. There are certainly pockets of depression. But overall, the state had the highest non-farm employment it ever had, and had the highest gross domestic product it ever had, yet we had a $1.6 billion deficit. We all learned as employment went up and productivity went up, so would the government have the resources it would need to take care of its core function. There's something broken, there's something that needs to be fixed. Certainly with a $9.5 billion budget, there are going to always be ways, a $9.5 billion general fund, I should say, there are always going to be ways for us to eliminate waste and fraud and streamline. I get that, you get that, we ought to be working on that every day. One thing we also need to consider is that we have a $7.5 billion tax exemption, tax rebate, tax credit budget. We give away a lot of money in this state, and we have a duty to make sure that when we give it away, we get something in return for it for the people of this state. When you stop and think about 1989, Governor Buddy Roma had a great idea. He came up with something called the Revenue Estimating Conference, and we would have a transparent process that would allow us to take a look at how we were raising the money and how much money the governor would have in his executive budget. It's time for us to pass a bill to create the counterpart to the REC, what I'm calling the ERC, the Exemption Review Conference. We need to put exemptions through a periodic review. You would be shocked to know that in Louisiana there is no process, there's not a single process that we have in Louisiana to periodically review the exemptions and the rebates and the credits we give away. And what we've done in the meantime is forced our college students and our health care providers and our local governments to bear the burden. We can do better than that. I look forward to working with you on that very, very important issue. When it comes to the inventory tax, folks, experts will tell us around that there are always better ways to raise the revenue for our communities and our state than inventory tax. And while that may be true, let's make it very, very clear. While the state needs to get its fiscal house in order, the state should not fix its house by wrecking city halls of the 303 municipalities across Louisiana. We ought to look at ways on the inventory tax, but we ought to make a commitment, and I'll make a commitment, we will not remove the inventory tax at all until we can find a replacement for it that fits, that works, and makes you whole. It doesn't make sense for Baton Rouge to take its problems and push them on down the line. That just doesn't work. It hasn't worked. And certainly with regards to the advisory commission, the Intergovernmental Advisory Commission, I would certainly want to work with you because no person has a monopoly on those good ideas. The way we build a better Louisiana is working in all aspects and bringing shareholders and stakeholders to the table. And I certainly would pledge to you that we will work and have a very robust intergovernmental commission. As a former parish president, I worked in that capacity. As a former member of a police jury, I worked in that capacity. I understand how important it is. When it comes to leadership and making sure that your leadership has access to meetings and a regular dialogue with the governor's office, you betcha. That's an easy commitment for me to make. And when it comes to having access to the mayors and the chiefs of police and the city council members of our city, let's face it, we all represent the same constituents. When you have a problem and you're trying to solve it, you're trying to solve the same problem that I may be trying to solve. Your constituents will be my constituents, and I look forward to working with you by having accessibility to the governor of this state. When it comes to transportation and roads and bridges, it's time for us to put trust back in the Transportation Trust Fund. We have found a way in this state to take money that was originally dedicated for roads and bridges to be used for non-infrastructure related items. That's not fair. That's not right. When you pay gasoline taxes, you expect them to go on roads and bridges and ports. We need to bring back that kind of discipline to state government. I will do that. Certainly as a former parish president, I know what it is to build roads and bridges. One thing I might point out, again, Baton Rouge doesn't have all the ideas and all the answers, I would tell you that. Somehow in America, it's okay for the federal government to pass a gasoline tax and build interstate roads. It's okay for state government to pass a gasoline tax and build, federal government to build federal roads and the state government to build state roads. There are more miles of local roads in our state than there are state roads and federal roads combined, and yet we have a prohibition on you going to the vote of the people and allowing you to raise the revenue to fix your problems. You know, Louisiana should not have to wait on Washington to make it great, and the 64 parishes and the 303 municipalities shouldn't have to wait on Baton Rouge to make themselves great. I think we ought to unshackle some of the prohibitions that we have provided or placed on local government and give you an opportunity through a vote of the people to have a bigger menu of opportunities to fix things. When it comes to the internet, you know, I think it's time for America to pass the Market Fairness Act. How can it be fair to the local businessman or businesswoman that you're recruiting and you say, come and be a part of my Main Street? And when you're a part of my Main Street, go to the bank and borrow money and take the risk. And when you take the risk, build a building and pay property taxes and hire people and make all those risks. And then when the Boy Scouts need $1, we come see you. When the Girl Scouts need $1, we come see you. When we want to build another church, we come see you. But yet, that retailer has to collect a sales tax that when you buy that same item from somewhere in Chicago or New York or California, you don't have to pay it. That's not fair. That's not right for the business owners. That's not right for our local communities that have seen a total erosion of their ability to collect sales tax. It's time for America to pass the Market Fairness Act today. No question about it. When you think of the opportunities and the challenges that we have in local government, that's a good place for us to start and get some things done. I want to wrap up on one thing, workforce development. I'm going to be an all-in governor on workforce development. When we stop and think about it, 60% of the jobs that we're going to create in Louisiana over the next 10 years are going to require more than a high school diploma and less than a 4-year degree. It's somewhere in Louisiana and perhaps somewhere in America, we took a wrong turn and we created two classes of people. A class of people that go to college and a class of people that don't go to college. I think it's wrong. I think we couldn't have done anything much worse. The reality of it all is that people who work for a living through pipe fitting and welding and concrete pouring and building carpentry and all those things are as important to this economy as the bank president or the insurance executive. And I think we need to go all in and provide opportunities for our children in Louisiana to get the kind of skills that they need. As I always say, pour moi, c'est la Louisiane, chaque fois, tous les temps. For me, it's Louisiana every time, all the time. I would appreciate your vote and support on October the 24th.
Okay, before I recognize the next candidate, I just want you to know please don't leave the building. The workshops is going to be continued later on instead of starting at 2. We're running a little late, so please pay attention. Next one is Representative John Bell Edwards, currently serving as the State Representative of District 72. Being from the heart of Louisiana, he understands the unique culture and values that make our state great. As one of 8 children from the family of long dedicated public service, John Bell carries a family tradition. While serving in the House of Representatives, John Bell has fought fair, compassionate solutions to problems in Louisiana, facing such as equal pay legislation, Medicaid expansion, and cost of living adjustments for the retirees. Being a husband of a teacher, John Bell knows firsthand of the importance of education. That is why he's been one of the leading advocates for K-12 education funding. From 2013 to 2015, he secured $250 million from K-12 education. This funding would not have been possible without the tireless persistence of John Bell Edwards. Mr. John Bell Edwards.
Thank you, David, and thank all of you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And to Carol and Barney and Ronnie, all of you, appreciate this opportunity to address you on some important issues. And Joey, the power of prayer is an awesome thing, and I hope that you and all the people in Lafayette and this region have been able to feel the prayers, not just of fellow Louisianans, but people around the country and around the world in this tragic and sad time. We were given 7 questions to try to answer. I'm going to do my best to honor your request. We have 12 minutes, and so here goes. On the inventory tax, my position as governor will be exactly the same as it was and is as legislator, and that is I do not support the repeal or elimination of this tax. It is a constitutionally protected revenue stream for local government. It was voted on by the people of Louisiana and approved, and I just have to ask you, what substitute can possibly be offered to you that is as good as that? There is none. And I don't just say that for the first time today. I met with local government leaders from every association during the past legislative session, and I encouraged them not to deal on this because it isn't right for local government to have to do that. And in fact, I did that at the LMA headquarters. I assured them that the legislature would not throw local government under the bus. But you do need to be concerned because there are those in Baton Rouge who, in light of 7 years of persistent revenue shortfalls, this past year $1.6 billion, the forecast for the next 5 years is for more revenue shortfalls in each of those years. There are those in Baton Rouge who would love to balance the books of the state on the backs of local government. That's the wrong approach. I said so then, I say so today. What we did with the tax credit, I think, is appropriate. We reduced it from 100%, 100 cents on the dollar, down to 75 cents on the dollar. The state's going to save about $100 million. It didn't affect any business whose tax liability on the inventory tax is $10,000 or less. And ultimately now the taxpayers are going to make sure that the assessments are correct. I think that was a smart way to go, but it did not hurt local government. As a very basic matter, the state of Louisiana should never offer tax incentives that allow people to come into your local neighborhoods, your communities, your parishes, and build a business or expand a business and thereby save on local taxes unless you have agreed to that. You need to be at the table. One of the things that's persistently a problem is the industrial property tax exemption. The state should not be a big brother to you in that sense. If we unify the sales tax base, certain exemptions that you don't offer, for example, prescription drugs, we should allow you to continue to do that. Otherwise, you're going to suffer a loss of revenue. There was a bill brought in the legislature a couple of years ago that was going to force local government to offer that exemption. I voted against that bill after conferring with members of the Louisiana Municipal Association. Finally, with respect to the first set of questions, 1 cent and not less than 1 cent of the 16 cents on the gas tax is earmarked for local transportation projects. I support that. I say so today. I said so at the Police Jury Association, and I said so much earlier this year at a forum that was sponsored by the asphalt, concrete, and engineering interests across the state of Louisiana. And I do agree with Scott that we should allow local taxing entities to levy a gas tax if they want to and if the voters will approve, so that you can undertake your own transportation infrastructure projects with revenue that's available to you. You shouldn't always be looking for the state government to come and do that for you if you want to do that locally. But when that happens, the state has to maintain its current effort in your localities. Otherwise, you would be imposing a new tax on yourselves, and that money would simply be moved somewhere else that you're already getting. That would be wrong. With respect to the Marketplace Fairness Act at the federal level, I do call on Congress to pass that. It is not a new tax. You know, right now, if you order merchandise from a catalog or on the internet out of state, the sales tax is owed, but the collection mechanism is completely broken because it relies on the honor system. Well, it isn't working, and as a result, some estimates are that up to $800 million are being lost to state and local government. Because the state sales tax is actually lower than most of the local governments, it's actually to your benefit more than the states that we correct this problem. It is also a matter of fairness. Local brick and mortar retailers should not put themselves at a 9 or 10% competitive disadvantage by simply collecting and remitting a sales tax. After all, these are people who invest in Louisiana. They hire Louisiana workers. They pay property taxes and other taxes. They make a payroll, and they shouldn't, by simply collecting and remitting sales tax that the state and local government imposes on them, be at a competitive disadvantage. That's wrong. It is not a new tax. Now, in order to be able to do this, Louisiana is going to have to put itself in a position to take advantage of this federal act. So I will work toward unifying the state and local sales tax collections by creating a unified sales tax commission, working with local government to make sure that the seats on the commission are filled by local government representatives, because otherwise it's never going to happen. You have to be completely comfortable in the process. You have to be completely comfortable in the result, that going forward it's going to be fair. Otherwise, it will not be possible to do this. And as taxes come in to this unified commission and they are collected, those taxes should be immediately paid out to the local government. It's not state money, so that portion of the sales tax that goes to local government should go there immediately and should never be put into the state budget, should never rely upon appropriation to pay it out. It should go straight to you all so that you have the availability of that money immediately. With respect to the Advisory Commission on Intergovernment Relations and Local Government Liaison, I want you to know that LMA leadership will always be able to meet with me in person as necessary, so that together we can be partners in leading Louisiana. Every constituent of the governor of the Louisiana is also a constituent of local government. I know that. Real leadership is required, a real partnership is required. And yes, I will provide a point of contact within my administration to meet with LMA leadership and individual mayors as needed. I commit to appointing a liaison to facilitate effective communication, problem solving, and to remove bureaucratic red tape. It's called teamwork. Further, LMA leadership will have a seat at the table in helping me decide who that liaison should be to make sure that that person will be truly effective. And I will not select some kid, 22 years old, from Florida or New York or somewhere else. It'll be an experienced person here in Louisiana who knows municipal and local government. And I absolutely commit myself to holding scheduled, annual, if not more frequent, meetings between myself and the LMA leadership. It's for my benefit. It will also be for your benefit, but most importantly, for the benefit of the people that you represent. And so I absolutely commit to doing that. And yes, I will support the Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations. It is primarily a creature of the legislature. They fund it, but the governor does have 4 appointees to that 19-board commission, and I absolutely will support that so that we're always having the communications we need, the studies that we need, so that we can improve the relationship between state and local government and among the local governments. I will also, as your governor, make sure that I keep foremost in mind that it is time to put Louisiana first. After 8 years of a governor who has decided that self-ambition and what sells best in South Carolina, Iowa, or New Hampshire is most important to him, it is time for Louisiana to have a governor who goes to work every day worried first and foremost about the people of Louisiana and making decisions that are in our best interest and not in his best interest. In my estimation, that's exactly what this governor has gotten wrong over the last number of years, and we're all paying a price for it, and we're going to be a long time trying to overcome it. But the sooner we make the change, the better off we're going to be. Yes, Louisiana deserves a governor who wakes up every day worried about the people of Louisiana, and Louisiana deserves a governor who wakes up in the state of Louisiana. Now, my record standing up and fighting against Governor Jindal and his disastrous policies didn't start 6 months ago or a year ago. They're 6 and 7 years in the making, because his policies were just as wrong and just as disastrous when he was at 70% approval and in his first term, and we all know that now. I have not been a cheerleader or an enabler for Bobby Jindal. Now, we can do better, but only if collectively we make better decisions about who we entrust the top levels of state leadership to. As your next governor, you can count on me to work with you. I will never embarrass you, and together we will serve the people of Louisiana well. I humbly and sincerely ask you for your support. I ask you to join me on this journey, and yes, I ask you not only for your vote, but for your prayers. God bless the United States of America, and God bless the great state of Louisiana. Thank you.
Our next candidate is our U.S. Senator David Vitter, is a bold conservative reformer who fights to solve most of the significant problems with Louisiana common sense. David worked hard to truly represent Louisiana citizens. He held over 375 town hall meetings in every parish of the state, as well as 180 telephone town hall. David also refused to join the congressional retirement system. He's fighting to have Congress to live under the same Obamacare rules as everyone else, and has refused the health care subsidy members of Congress currently received. After serving a bold conservative reformer as a state legislator, Senator Vitter was elected to U.S. House of Representatives. He was also elected U.S. Senate in 2004 and overwhelmingly re-elected in 2010. As the chairman of the Senate Small Business Committee, he's an advocate for Louisiana small business, for shaping policies that would help small businesses grow by freeing them from unnecessary implements from the federal government. David and his wife, Wendy, have 4 beautiful children, and they live in Metairie. Senator Vitter.
Thanks very much, David and Carol, Ronnie, all of you for the invitation to be here. But even more importantly, thanks for the great partnership over many years. We have a great, wonderful working relationship, and I know that's absolutely going to continue. I'm running for governor because while Louisiana has enormous challenges, we read about them every day in the newspaper, I'm even more firmly convinced that we face great opportunities if we come together, exert strong leadership, and meet those challenges head on. And that's what I'm going to do. That's what my campaign is about. That's what my administration is about. That's the only reason I'm running, to meet those key challenges head on with strong solutions as a team, not to kick the can down the road, not to play politics, certainly not to worry about what national political pundits or voters in Iowa or New Hampshire think. And that's the leadership I'm going to bring. For that reason, I said when I first announced my intention to run that this will be my last political job, elected or appointed, period. And that's to say I will get up every day focused exclusively on doing right by all of Louisiana, from our best and brightest to our most vulnerable. For all of those reasons, I'm also building my campaign around a clear, detailed plan that addresses all of those big issues, because we're way beyond the need for slogans or political rhetoric or throwaway lines. We need real solutions and strong leadership. We've compiled this in, as I say, a detailed plan. It's called Together, Louisiana Strong, our blueprint for building a brighter future. You have an excerpt at your table, but the entire plan is at davidvitter.com, and I really invite you to go there, see what you think, and respond. Interestingly, it addresses pretty much all the questions the LMA laid out for me and for the other candidates. So let me go into some of those key priorities. First of all, staying in contact with you and working closely with you. As all of you know who visited my office or have visited with me as I travel the state, that's how I do my job now. That's how I'll do my job as governor, to stay in close contact with you and your constituents and communities all around the state. In fact, the very first chapter I set out in this plan, Together Louisiana Strong, is entitled Staying in Touch. And it's about doing just that, holding town halls in every parish of the state, as I do now, reaching out in myriad other ways, opening up the governor's mansion monthly for an open house coffee, and certainly meeting with you, working closely with you directly and the LMA leadership. I've always gone out of my way to meet with you and your LMA leadership, and that will continue. I'll certainly appoint a high-ranking, significant official to be a liaison to local government, and that person will have real significance and rank in my administration. I'll attend LMA meetings. More importantly, I'll come to your communities as I do now. And as you know, I don't have town halls and meetings just in Lafayette and Baton Rouge and Shreveport, but in all sorts of communities around the state, like Church Point and Zwolle and Baker, and that'll continue. And you have my personal cell phone number. I've given it out to you at other meetings, give it out again, 504-256-2300. And most importantly, that number won't change on election night. But do me a favor, don't try it right now, it's turned off. It does remind me of an LMA meeting in New Orleans we had about 3 years ago, where I made the same comment and moved on to other topics. And then 3 minutes later, my phone was ringing in my pocket and said, "Sorry, I thought I'd turned this off, excuse me." And a guy stands up in the second row and says, "Oh, that's just me. I didn't believe it was your number." Well, it is, but I'll turn it back on after I leave. Secondly, tax issues, your tax base, exemptions, and the like. The second chapter I released in this detailed plan was about exactly that, stabilizing the budget through real spending reform and tax reform. As you'll see in the plan, that certainly includes getting far more disciplined than we have been with exclusions and exemptions and deductions. That's important at the state level. It's also important to protect your tax base. And we'll go through those with a fine-tooth comb to be far more disciplined. The inventory tax, unlike the previous speaker, I strongly support getting rid of the inventory tax because it is a big impediment to job growth and businesses coming to Louisiana. And if you don't think that affects your communities, your revenue, your bottom line, I think you're wrong. So I strongly support getting rid of that tax, but only, and again, I say this in black and white, I said it months ago as the first candidate to speak to the issue, but only with a guaranteed, protected, hold harmless revenue source for local government. That's the only way it's going to happen, and that has to be strongly protected, either in the Constitution or something commensurate with that. And then sales tax. I think sales tax on internet sales is coming. It's inevitable. It's passed the Senate. I voted against the particular bill because I thought the small business tax exemption needs to be higher for very small businesses, but it's passed the Senate, and I think it will pass the House before long. We need to be properly prepared for that with state-based sales tax collection, consolidated sales tax collection. I'll lead the effort on that with your help, and that absolutely has to guarantee immediate remittance of local revenue to local government. That has to be immediate, certainly cannot depend on an appropriation process or any other passage of bills in Baton Rouge. And today, with modern technology, there's absolutely no reason that can't be immediate. It can be, it has to be, to guarantee you that you get that local revenue immediately. And finally, highways, roads, bridges, infrastructure. Again, that is a very significant priority of mine. We all face endless traffic delays, bad road conditions, gridlock all around the state. That's a big quality of life issue. It's also a big economic issue because it's a bottleneck, no pun intended, to job growth and creation around the state. Again, I address that issue directly in my plan as well, and I'd love for you to look at the details. Some issues. We need more protection of the so-called State Transportation Trust Fund because it has been used as a piggy bank to raid in recent years for unrelated purposes. Last year, only 11% of that State Transportation Trust Fund revenue went to new road and bridge construction and repair. 11%. It should be virtually all of the revenue going to that purpose. So we need to better protect that so-called trust fund, reinstill trust in the trust fund. And certainly that should include appropriate participation, which is guaranteed there now for local government and local roads. In addition, I'll lead an effort to come up with a high priority infrastructure building plan sometime after the first session of my administration to look at needed high priority projects, new revenue streams matched to that so that they can be built on an expedited basis. We also need to decentralize DOTD. It's too centralized in Baton Rouge. We need to give the regional offices that work with you more power and more authority to do more in their regions. And finally, I'm very much open to local revenue sources for you to directly address local road and transportation needs. And I'm very open to your ideas about that. I think we have to be careful how we do that. For instance, if it were allowed to happen on a parish by parish basis, there could be an inhibiting factor of parishes trying to be the lowest price in the region to garner more sales in their parish. So we may have to do it on a regional basis or have some discussion about that. But I'm certainly open to giving you both more authority and more revenue responsibility with an appropriate vote of the people. I humbly ask for your vote and support, and I ask for your partnership. We've had that in my work in the Congress. I've valued that active partnership. That's why I meet with you and your LMA leadership very, very regularly. That partnership, that teamwork will continue. Because if we do come together, if we do face our big issues and big problems head on with that strong leadership and with the real solutions I talked about, we can garner enormous opportunities. We could take advantage of a great, great future for just not ourselves, but our kids and grandkids. And I humbly ask you for your partnership to make that happen for a far brighter future and an even better Louisiana. Thanks so much for your leadership.
Now next, Lieutenant Governor Jay Doran. Louisiana Lieutenant Governor Jay Doran has led the state tourism effort to conservative, record-breaking years. After taking office in the wake of the BP oil spill, he was introduced to Louisiana Pick Your Passion campaign, which helped overcome challenges and created by the disaster. The hospitality industry is one of the state's top employees, and job creation has been the top priority for the Lieutenant Governor. More than 27.3 million people visit Louisiana in 2013, spending more than 10.8 billion, numbers set during the state bicentennial celebration in 2012. He heads the Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, which includes state museum system and the state park system, and the state library, arts and historical preservation, seafood promotion, and marketing board, Volunteers Louisiana, and tourism. He's also chaired two major sponsors by American Wetland Foundation, Building Resilient Communities, and Big River Works. Prior to his election as Lieutenant Governor, he served 4 years as Secretary of State, 15 years in the State Senate, and 3 years in Baton Rouge Metro Councilman. Let's give a good hand to Lieutenant Governor J. Dog.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you today. I thank David and John Bell and Scott for joining us as well, and thanks to your leadership, David, and Marnie and Lawrence and Carol. Congratulations to all of you for what you've done. Mayor Durrell, thank you for joining us. I think the whole world has had its eyes on Lafayette, but more importantly, it's had its heart with Lafayette, and I think we still are recognizing that today, and this is, in fact, the happiest town in America. You know, it's one of 7 out of the top 10 happiest towns in America that call Louisiana home. So it's not just Lafayette that's a happy place, it's the entire state of Louisiana, and I'm pleased to stand before you and ask you for your help and your support to allow me to lead this state to even greater heights. I have a lot of friends out there. I've worked with you very closely. I saw Pete Heine. Pete joined the LMA, I think, a couple of weeks after Governor Claiborne's term ended back in the early days of Louisiana. But he is an icon when it comes to your organization. It's always good to see him. He's representative, I think, of the same spirit that all of you bring to this organization. My introduction to public service came as a Baton Rouge Metro Councilman in the late 1980s. I want to tell you about a couple of experiences because they shaped the way I view a leader's role in governing. We had a serious flood in South Baton Rouge, and my council district was literally almost entirely underwater, not hurricane-induced, but simply by a heavy, severe series of rainstorms. And the district was underwater. And I, needless to say, got lots of calls and had lots of concerns about what we could do. And when the water subsided, I said, we're gonna have a series of meetings on 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday mornings for 2 months minimum every week, and we'll go further if we have to see what we can do to address this problem. Developers in the area said, no, it ain't gonna happen. You're not gonna be able to do anything. Real estate agents said, you're gonna jack up the price of houses, nobody's gonna buy a house. Hydrologists said, not sure we can do anything with the way the floodplain works in Louisiana. Citizens who'd been flooded said, I'll be there. What can we do? And everybody came to these meetings on Monday mornings, 7 o'clock in the morning. We got out by 8 o'clock. They knew if they weren't there for breakfast, they'd be on the breakfast menu. Everybody was there to protect their interest and to say what needed to be said. And after about 2 months, we came up with an ordinance that everybody agreed on and that the Metropolitan Council passed unanimously, called the Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance. Not a single house in Baton Rouge that has been built in accordance with that ordinance since then has flooded as a result of natural consequences. It required you to elevate your house a little bit above the floodplain, required you to build retention ponds to replace the dirt and water drainage systems that were being taken by the result of development. The point is, I learned very early in my career as a public servant that you bring people together, you find points of agreement, you understand points of disagreement, and then you go solve problems. That's what government is all about. And I always feel like the greatest service I ever provided perhaps was on that Metropolitan Council where we passed that ordinance and we passed a qualification-based selection process for architects and engineers, passed a Clean Indoor Air Act, which I renamed the Semi-Clean Indoor Air Act after the smokers on the council got through with it back in the late 80s. But I had the pleasure of serving with your former leader, Tom Ed McHugh, as mayor for 4 years and during the time that I was on the council, and we worked very closely together, and I've taken those lessons with me at every position I've gone to since then. I had the pleasure of serving for 15 years in the state Senate. I chaired the Senate Finance Committee for 4 years. I was vice chairman for 4 years. I've balanced these budgets. I've dealt with this budget in good times and in bad times. I've seen the ups, I've seen the downs. I've negotiated with the people who had their hand out and the people who said don't do anything else. And that's what you've got to do when you're a governor. You've got to be able to bring people together, listen to what they have to say, let them know where you stand, and then make decisions that are in the best interest of the entire people that you represent. I had the privilege of serving as Secretary of State, elected the year after Katrina and Rita, when we were struggling with elections. And we did elections the way the legislature told us to. We followed the rules. We made sure that people who were displaced as a result of Katrina had the right to vote if they were still registered here. But we made sure that those who chose to register in a new state didn't have the right to vote twice and come back to Louisiana. Got sued over that, but we won. We followed the law. We did what had to be done, and people were able to vote and express their opinion. And as we recognize the 10-year anniversary of these storms, we look at how far Louisiana's come in this decade, thinking what it might have been in the wake of those storms, looking at the devastation, wondering, was Louisiana going to step up and make it happen? And we have. And I congratulate and commend all of you in those ravaged areas who have made certain that your communities have come back. When I ran for lieutenant governor, I said I wanted to do three things. I wanted a new brand for Louisiana, and we got it. I told our ad agency what I wanted it to be. Louisiana, pick your passion, because we're passionate people. I said I would do more with less. With far less people in my employment, far less money than any of my predecessors had, we've had 3 record-setting years in tourism. Over 28 million people last year, leaving behind $836 million in state sales tax alone that none of us in this room paid. Tourism's a big business if it's treated as such and recognized how important it is to your community. I've been with many of you in your communities, starting Main Street programs, expanding our cultural district programs, making sure that we funded desperately needed arts programs in your communities that create jobs on Main Street and for your constituents to make your communities what you want it to be, because quality of life is that important to all of us in Louisiana in this wonderful mix of cultures that Joey talked about that is in fact a human gumbo and makes us unlike any other place in the world, which is why people like to come here. And when they come here, they seldom leave saying, I'll never go back there again. It's always, I can't wait till I go back to Louisiana. And that's the kind of welcome mat we always need to have out. I want to answer your specific questions, obviously. They're good questions, they're appropriate questions, and they're tough challenges for us. The inventory tax is a crazy tax. It ought not be on the books, it ought to be repealed. But I am not going to support repeal of the inventory tax until we find a way to replace it. The state created this mess, gave you the resources that are gained from the inventory tax. It's not right for the state then to come in and take it away when so many of you have built your budgets upon that money that you know is coming. And we're talking sheriffs, we're talking police juries, we're talking LMA members, we're talking local governments. But we need to change this, and I ask you to help us change it. You need to be the ones that help us think about what we can do to replace that revenue source, because the inventory tax is not a productive tax for the economy of Louisiana. We need to look long-term and think about how we can repeal it, but we won't do it until we make sure that we don't just yank the rug out from under you and say, see you later. That will not happen, I assure you, under a Darden administration. The exceptions and exclusions and credits that have become such a point of discussion during this past legislative session cry out to be changed. I like the ideas put forth in the economic study by Jim Richardson. The Committee of 100 will be coming out with a report as well that says to Louisiana, think about flattening your tax rates, both personal and corporate income taxes. Get rid of a lot of these exclusions and exceptions and credits that confuse the system and cost everybody a lot of money. We can make our tax code much simpler, and it's going to be a top priority. I fear that come January of next year, we'll be in a special session to deal with the current fiscal year, though, because what the legislature did during this session was funded basically a 6-month budget. We're not going to be able to get by, I don't believe, with a lawsuit pending, with a mysterious SAVE Act, money that doesn't exist, and other revenue sources. We're going to have to deal with the current fiscal year budget quickly. And after that, we got to start having serious discussions, thinking long-term, how we deal with this long-term question. I want to reform the capital outlay process. I want it to be an actual blueprint for spending that we're going to have, not be left entirely to the governor to decide which of a zillion projects are going to be funded. Let's decide what's most important. Let's budget by priorities and say what's important, we're going to fund it. What's next, we're going to fund it. We need to allocate more of those capital outlay dollars to state transportation needs. That has to be a state priority, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that to you. We've got to think in terms of the capital outlay bill supplementing what we do for road prevention and maintenance in Louisiana, because the state alone is responsible for those state highways and those state bridges and our port system. And we've got to do something to accelerate the time that we deal with those particular problems. I'm going to propose that from a capital outlay standpoint. We all agree, I think you've heard from all of us, the Transportation Trust Fund needs to be revisited and prioritized, truly dedicated, committed. If not, it probably won't be every cent, because obviously the Parish Transportation Fund gets some of that money. The state police had gotten some money, it got taken away, but it's the Transportation Trust Fund. It's for transportation. Let's use it for its intended purpose. It's time that we as elected officials look the people of Louisiana in the eye and be honest with them and tell them what our needs are, tell them what our priorities are, ask for their support to take Louisiana where we want it to be, not 4 years from now come re-election time, but 25 and 50 years from now, when our children and grandchildren will be sitting in these seats trying to make decisions about the next 50 years of Louisiana. I agree that you ought to be given the option to raise the gas tax at a local level. I think that's something you see general agreement from all of us on. That's going to be a point of discussion, but it absolutely is going to take a lot of people at the table trying to figure out how it can be done in a fair way and on local choice and local option, and hopefully not done the way the federal government has done it or the way the state government has done it, that has put us in this position where we don't have enough revenue to keep up with the sheer cost of road construction, just given the inflation that takes place. We've got to be prepared for the Market Fairness Act. I hope, Senator Vitter, you and your colleagues, you've already passed it in that House. I hope it becomes a reality. That needs to happen for America. It's the right, fair thing to do for Main Street. It's the right, fair thing to do for municipalities across the country. We are going to have to adapt to a new system of sales tax collection in order to be compatible with that federal law. To do that, though, it needs to be done with your not only sitting at the table, but having most of the input on how we can do this. Again, I ask you to help us solve this problem. Come to us at the state level and tell us how it can be done fairly, how it can be done reasonably, how it would help you be satisfied that you'll be able to maintain the income level that you have and have a centralized system that makes sense. We're one of the only places in America that does it the way we do it. We have to rethink this and be willing to rethink it in contemplation of the Market Fairness Act becoming a reality. The Advisory Committee on Intergovernmental Relations hadn't met since about 2006, I think. They meet on an interim basis when a legislative resolution tells them to meet and discuss something. I will bring back that statutory creation, ask you to appoint members who are going to come to meetings. I'll appoint senators and legislators, representatives who will want to come to those meetings, and you'll have a liaison for intergovernmental affairs. In addition to me, I'll be the main one. I'll be the guy that you can talk to. Most of you have got my cell phone as well, 225-252-3040. Hadn't changed, won't change. You'll be able to reach me as you have now. As I look at the audience of mayors, when you've called me and wanted something to happen from CRT standpoint, you met with me. You got a return call from me. That's the way it's going to be. Somewhere down the line, you may meet with other people who have more technical expertise, but it's important for you to have direct access to the governor, and you will have that. And this Intergovernmental Affairs Committee will be reactivated, will be a meaningful point of discussion for you and for the administration that I will lead. I am concerned about Sterlington, not Burlington, Columbia, Louisiana, not Columbia, South Carolina, and Des Allemands, Louisiana, not Des Moines, Iowa. We got to put Louisiana ahead of us and not in the rearview mirror where it is right now. You give me the chance to be your governor, and every day I'll wake up working as hard as I have in the past to make sure that great things happen for this great state. God bless you, and thank you for being here.
Look, I think Louisiana is hungry on the very first day of our next governor to be able to work across party lines, work across geographic, racial lines, and gender lines. And I certainly have distinguished myself as a person who has always played for the name on the front of the jersey, Louisiana. In addition, I'm a bottom-up guy. I'm a guy that started at the very bottom of government. And I think when you stop and think of the folks around you that started at the very bottom and ascended to the top of their profession, you know, when you do that, you kind of, I think, you approach problem solving a little differently. You learn how to collaborate and cooperate. And I think we need a governor that doesn't just know, is not focused on knowing everything, but wanting to work with everyone.
First of all, nobody in the race has the breadth of experience that I do, having served in local government, been in the state legislature and the Senate for 15 years, and having run 2 departments of state government, proving that you can do more with less. Far less employees, far less money than any of my predecessors, and I think that experience clearly sets me apart, and I believe my skill set, my ability to bring people together and have a common focus on Louisiana, regardless of party, geography, race, economic status, is what I'll be telling the people to compare all of us and see who they believe is the best person to lead the state through what is going to be a very difficult and challenging time.
I have a record over a number of years now of not being a cheerleader and enabler for Governor Bobby Jindal. I didn't wait until he was 1 foot out the door and 30% in the approval polls to try to separate myself from the disastrous policies that he's pursued as governor. As a leader in the legislature, I started doing that 6 and 7 years ago. And so I have some credibility when it comes to judgment, when it comes to making decisions about what's in the best interest of Louisiana and what we need to do to put Louisiana first and actually invest in the institutions that afford people opportunity for a better life, for the American dream here in Louisiana. So my record, in contrast to my opponents, is not one where I've been a cheerleader and a neighbor for Bobby Jindal. I want to take the state in a new, better, more positive direction. And so that's clearly what distinguishes me first and foremost from my opponents.
Well, I think what Louisiana really needs now is strong leadership and clear, detailed solutions. And that's what I'm offering through my campaign, including through a detailed plan. Together, Louisiana Strong, our blueprint for building a brighter future. It's on davidvitter.com. And I'm the only candidate who has that detailed plan going issue by issue. Collected ideas from all around the state, not my ideas, but our ideas collectively about exactly how we're going to meet our biggest challenges head on. Because that's why I'm running, why I'm offering strong leadership, not to kick the can down the road more, not to avoid the big issues, but to address them as a team, as a state, head on so that we can really get to a better place.